There is a specific feeling that haunts people who are, by every outward measure, doing fine. The feeling of living only half of a life. Somewhere inside them there is a force, an energy, a whole part of who they are, locked away, pressing against the walls, and they have no idea how to release it. They sense the other half of themselves the way a person senses a room they are never allowed to enter. Most people go looking for their life's mission in what they already do well. In the light, in the presentable, acceptable parts of themselves. But Carl Jung taught something that sounds almost backwards. A person's true power, what he called the gold of the soul, is not found in their light. It is buried in the exact place they are most afraid to look, in the shadow. This is not another abstract lecture about the shadow. This is the map. Jung's work points to a practical sequence. How a person finds the exiled parts of themselves, how they speak to them, and how they turn the very traits they spent a lifetime repressing into the compass for their purpose. Stay until the end, because the final step is where the buried energy finally becomes a direction. If this is stirring something already, comment the word gold below. First, the shadow has to be understood correctly, because almost everyone gets it wrong. The shadow is not evil. It is not the bad in a person. Jung defined it as unlived potential. Every impulse, trait, and desire that was pushed into the dark, not because it was wrong, but because at some point it was judged unacceptable, inconvenient, or simply too much. Picture a loud, restless child locked in a basement. The child does not go quiet down there. It gets louder. It gets angrier. It pounds on the door. That is what repressed energy does. It does not vanish when it is exiled. It intensifies. And it drains the person who buries it, because holding a door shut for 30 years costs everything they have. And this is what matters for purpose. A life's mission demands vitality. It demands raw energy. When a person spends all of theirs holding parts of themselves in the basement, staying agreeable, staying palatable, staying good, there is nothing left to build a legacy with. The one who represses half of themselves to remain acceptable has only half of themselves left to live with, and their purpose was never going to be built by that obedient half. It was always waiting in the part they locked away. So how does a person find their shadow today, right now, without years of analysis? Jung gave a shortcut, and it is almost unfairly simple. Other people. Consider the person someone cannot stand, the one whose behavior irritates them far beyond what is reasonable. And consider the one they admire so intensely it borders on worship. Both of those reactions point to the same thing, the person's own shadow reflected back at them. Because Jung understood that what a person most criticizes in another is very often what they will not allow themselves to be. When arrogance makes someone's blood boil, there is a harder possibility underneath it. That they have buried their own confidence, their own right to take up space, their own capacity to stand fully behind themselves, and they punish the other for expressing exactly what they forbade in themselves. The person they excessively admire is the same mechanism reversed, carrying a gold they have not yet claimed as their own. This is where purpose begins to surface, not in the trait itself, but in what it reveals. The disproportionate irritation is a signpost. It is the buried part of the self, waving from behind the basement door. Once the trait is spotted, Jung's method was not to analyze it to death. It was to speak to it. He called it active imagination, and a person can do a simple version of it with nothing but paper. They take the trait they uncovered through their own irritation, and they give it a name. They make it a character. The ambitious one, the rebel, the ruthless one, whatever fits the energy they found. And then, instead of judging it, they ask it a single question. What are you trying to give me? And the answer almost always surprises them, because the shadow rarely means what its surface name suggests. The greed a person was ashamed of turns out to be a deep hunger for abundance, the wish to provide, to build security for the people they love. The arrogance turns out to be self-respect they were never permitted to feel. The laziness turns out to be a real, long-ignored need for rest. Every exiled trait is carrying a message beneath its ugly name. The task is not to obey it blindly. The task is to hear what it actually wants, because inside that want is a piece of the person's direction. Then comes the step that separates real change from endless self-analysis: integration. Turning the raw, exiled energy into something a person can actually live by. Imagine the trait was aggression, a hardness, a capacity for confrontation someone learned to bury in order to be nice. Integration does not mean they walk out and start fights. That is not integration. That is the shadow running them. Integration means they take that same fierce energy, that edge, that teeth, and they aim it. They use it to finally find the courage to start the business they keep postponing, to say no to the job that has been quietly draining their soul for years, to hold the boundary they have never been able to hold. The energy was never the problem, its exile was. Pointed consciously, the very thing a person was ashamed of becomes the engine of the life they actually want. And this is the quiet revelation at the center of all of it. A life's mission is not something a person finds out there, like a hidden object. It is something they become. The moment they stop spending their strength fighting themselves and start letting the whole of who they are finally live. Purpose is not discovered by the half that stayed acceptable. It emerges from the whole, reunited. None of this is comfortable. Integrating the shadow is an act of courage. It means giving up the exhausting project of being a perfect person and accepting the far more demanding task of being a whole one. And wholeness includes the parts a person was taught to hate. Jung said it plainly. He did not aspire to be a good man. He aspired to be a complete one. And now, to you. If you have felt for a long time that you are living at half of your power, if there is a heat behind your irritation with certain people that you have never understood, a strength you keep apologizing for, a want you keep swallowing down, that is not a flaw in you. That is your gold, calling from the basement. Go down and get it. Name it, ask it what it wants, and then aim it, not carelessly at the world, but at the life you were always meant to build. The mission you keep searching for is not hiding in your talents. It is waiting in the parts of yourself you have refused to live. Comment below with the one trait your own irritation revealed to you today. And if you want the deeper theory beneath everything you just heard, why the shadow holds a person's purpose in the first place, the video on screen is where to go next. It is the foundation this one was built on. I'll see you there.